haven't slept in 3 days. The doctors diagnose it as PTSD, those flashbacks from my time on the force all tangled up with sleep deprivation. But they just don't get it. They can't possibly understand. What went down during my night shift at the Biltmore Hotel wasn't some kind of psychological break. It was real, every damn bit of it. I need to get this down while I still can, while my hands are steady enough to type and my mind is clear enough to remember the details. Maybe it'll help someone else survive if they ever find themselves in my situation, though honestly, I hope nobody ever does. Let me start from the beginning. I'm Mike Sullivan, ex-cop, 15 years on the force before everything went sideways, south. The funny thing about corruption is how it creeps up on you, a slow burn, little compromises at first, looking the other way when your partner accepts a thank you from some grateful shop owner, staying quiet when evidence disappears from lockup. But then I uncovered something bigger, much bigger. Money laundering running rampant through the department, evidence tampering, connections to organized crime that went all the way to the chief's office. I thought I was doing the right thing by gathering evidence, 15 years of building trust, of being one of the good ones, and I was ready to blow the whole damn thing open. Instead, my own team turned against me. Suddenly, I was the dirty cop, the rat, the one who couldn't be trusted by anyone. They planted evidence in my locker, doctored body cam footage, erased recordings that would have proved my innocence. Forced resignation followed, along with divorce papers from Sarah. She said she couldn't handle the shame, couldn't face our friends anymore. 20 years of marriage ended with a signature and the slam of a door, echoing in the empty house. These days, I waste away in a rundown Miami apartment that smells of mold and broken dreams, a constant reminder of my failures. The walls are thin enough that I hear my neighbors fighting at night, their Spanish curses mixing with the endless drone of my police scanner, a soundtrack to my despair. I keep it on out of habit, listening to my old beat, to the codes and calls that used to structure my life. Sometimes, I catch myself checking the shadows, convinced someone, or something, is watching me. Paranoid? Maybe. But after what happened at the Biltmore, I'm not so sure anymore if it's just paranoia. Yesterday started like any other day in my new normal, my personal hell. I woke up around noon, head pounding from cheap whiskey, mouth tasting like I'd been chewing on cigarette butts, a familiar and disgusting taste. The sunlight stabbed through my cracked window like an accusation, illuminating the disaster my life had become. A harsh and unforgiving spotlight. Empty bottles lined the windowsill, catching the light like stained glass in a forgotten church, relics of my self-destruction. The stack of unpaid bills on my coffee table had grown tall enough to cast its own shadow, a monument to my financial ruin. I dragged myself to the kitchen, stepping over a pizza box that had been there long enough to become part of the landscape, a permanent fixture of my squalor. The instant coffee tasted like ash, but it was better than nothing, a small comfort in a world of misery. My hands shook as I poured it, withdrawal or fear. I couldn't tell anymore, the lines blurred beyond recognition. I checked my phone, no messages. Sarah hadn't called in months, not that I blamed her. The only recent calls were from bill collectors and my landlord, their voicemails piling up like dead leaves, a constant reminder of my debts. I was on my third cigarette of the day, watching the smoke curl against the ceiling and wondering if the water stains had grown larger, when my phone rang, shattering the silence. Unknown number. Usually, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something, instinct, fate, or just plain desperation, made me answer. The voice on the other end was thin and reedy, like wind whistling through dead leaves, sending a chill down my spine. It reminded me of an old case, a body we'd found in an abandoned warehouse, the victim there for weeks, and when we moved him, the sound his dried skin made against the concrete, a sound that haunted my nightmares. Mr. Michael Sullivan, the voice pulled me back to the present, jolting me. "This is Mr. Whitaker from the Biltmore Hotel. We have an immediate opening for a night security position. Your law enforcement background makes you an ideal candidate." I almost laughed. My law enforcement background was exactly why nobody would hire me, a mark of Cain. But before I could say anything, he continued, his voice relentless. "The position pays $3,000 per night." That stopped me cold, freezing me in place. $3,000 for one night of security work? Had to be a scam, too good to be true. But Mr. Whitaker kept talking, his words slithering through my phone like smoke, wrapping around me. "We require someone with experience handling unusual situations. Someone who knows when to follow protocol and when to trust their instincts. Your record at the department, the real record, not the one they created, suggests you're exactly what we're looking for." That last bit stopped my breath, stealing the air from my lungs. The real record. Nobody was supposed to know about that. All evidence of my investigation had been buried or destroyed, erased from existence. I should have asked questions, demanded explanations, but when you're down to your last few dollars and the landlord's threatening eviction, even the strangest job offer starts to look like salvation, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. I arrived at the Biltmore just before 10 p.m. The Miami heat had finally broken, replaced by an unseasonable chill that seemed to emanate from the building itself, a cold that seeped into your bones. The hotel loomed against the night sky like a tombstone, a dark and imposing silhouette, its faded Art Deco facade a testament to better days, a relic of a bygone era. From the outside, it reminded me of those old photos you see of the Titanic. Something beautiful on the verge of disaster, a tragedy waiting to happen. No trespassing signs dotted the overgrown lawn, their edges curled and blackened as if they'd been burned, warnings unheeded. The front doors were solid oak, carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, playing tricks on your eyes. They opened silently at my touch, too silently for their apparent weight and age, a disturbing lack of sound. The lobby hit me like a physical force. Stale air thick with the smell of old books and something else. Something that reminded me of the evidence locker after a long summer power outage. A scent of decay and corruption. Dust motes danced in the dim light, moving against the air currents in ways that made my eyes hurt if I looked too long. A dizzying spectacle. The place was too damn long. The grand staircase dominated the space, its marble steps worn smooth by decades of foot traffic. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, their light seeming to sink into the shadows rather than dispelling them. Somewhere in the distance, old pipes groaned like something in pain. A massive mirror hung above the reception desk, its gilt frame blackened with age. As I approached, I noticed something odd about my reflection. A slight delay, barely perceptible, like watching a video feed with minor lag. Before I could process this, a voice spoke behind me. "Mr. Sullivan." I spun around, one hand instinctively reaching for a gun I no longer carried. Mr. Whitaker matched his voice. Tall and gaunt, with skin so pale it seemed to glow in the dim light. His suit looked like it belonged in a different century, perfectly pressed but somehow wrong, like a funeral suit that had been buried with its owner. Even his pocket watch chain seemed off, the links moving too slowly when he walked, as if passing through something thicker than air. "Your credentials are impressive," he said, producing a wax-sealed envelope from his coat. The paper looked ancient, yellowed and brittle, but the red wax gleamed like fresh blood. "Though I suspect you'll find our security protocols somewhat different from your police experience." He held out the envelope. As I reached for it, our fingers brushed. His skin was cold, not just cool, but the absolute absence of warmth, like touching dry ice. He held my gaze for a moment too long, his pupils expanding until they seemed to fill his entire eyes. "The rules are simple," he continued. but absolute. Follow them without question, and you'll survive until morning. Break them." He left the sentence hanging, turned, and walked away. His footsteps made no sound against the marble floor, and the shadows seemed to bend around him as he disappeared down a darkened hallway. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of yellowed paper. The rules were typed in an old-style font, some letters misaligned, as if hammered out on an ancient typewriter. The ink was an odd color, not quite black, more like dried blood that had oxidized over time. Each rule was simple, almost cryptic in its brevity. Rule 1. Acknowledge your reflection when it greets you. Rule 2. Room 303 remains sealed. Rule 3. Ignore all knocks between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Rule 4. Use only stairs after midnight, not the elevator. Rule 5. When lights flicker thrice, hide. Rule 6. Always leave a candle burning in the lobby. Rule 7. Do not speak to those who speak to you. Rule 8. Check the basement every hour. Rule 9. If the clock stops ticking, reset it immediately. If it shows a time that doesn't exist, leave the hotel before it reaches that time. Rule 10. When you leave the hotel at sunrise, never look back. I read them twice, trying to make sense of their cryptic nature. Each seemed to hint at some specific horror without actually describing it. My police training kicked in, and I found myself analyzing them like case notes, looking for patterns or hidden meanings. A sound pulled me from my thoughts, the soft click of heels on marble, echoing from the second floor. I looked up to see a woman in a dark blue dress standing at the top of the stairs. She seemed oddly out of focus, like a photograph taken with a shaky hand. "Excuse me," she called down, her voice carrying an echo it shouldn't have in the space. "Could you help me find my room?" I seemed to have gotten turned around. The 7th rule flashed through my mind. Do not speak to those who speak to you. I kept my eyes on the stairs in front of her, deliberately avoiding her face. "The numbers are different here," she continued, her voice taking on an odd, hollow quality. "They keep changing when I look away, and the hallways, they're longer than they should be, so much longer." I busied myself with checking the front desk, ignoring her completely. The clicking of heels resumed, faster now, coming down the stairs. Each click seemed to get louder, more deliberate, until it sounded less like shoes on marble and more like bone hitting stone. When the footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs, I forced myself to look up. The woman was gone, but in the mirror behind the desk, I caught a glimpse of something moving. A figure in a blue dress, its face a blank expanse of skin with no features at all. My hand shook as I reached for my phone to check the time. 10:47 p.m. The night had barely begun. The next hour passed in a blur of routine tasks that felt anything but routine. I did what any good cop would do. Established a patrol route, noted exits and potential hazards, checked the security office. The office itself was a cramped room behind the front desk, filled with old CCTV monitors that showed grainy black and white feeds from around the hotel. Most of them worked, displaying empty hallways and silent rooms, but the basement camera, something was wrong with that feed. The image seemed to pulse slightly, like a heartbeat. I tried to focus on the practical aspects of the job. It helped keep the fear at bay, gave me something concrete to hold on to as reality became increasingly fluid around me. But even simple tasks took on sinister overtones. The master key ring Mr. Whitaker had left felt too heavy, each key carved with symbols instead of numbers. When I tested them in different locks, they whispered against the mechanisms like secrets being told. Around 11:30 p.m., I was doing my third-floor patrol when I saw it. My first real proof that the rules weren't just some elaborate prank. The hallway stretched out before me, its faded red carpet seeming to absorb the light from the ancient wall sconces. As I passed a large mirror, something caught my eye. My reflection had stopped moving, a detail that sent a chill down my spine. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. In the mirror's surface, my reflection stood perfectly still, head tilted slightly, observing me with an expression I'd never witnessed on my own face before. A small smile played at its lips. Not my smile, but something older, colder, more calculating. As I watched in disbelief, it slowly raised its hand in greeting. The first rule of Whitaker's strange contract echoed in my mind. Acknowledge your reflection when it greets you. Good evening, I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt, a forced calm in the face of the impossible. The reflection's smile widened, revealing too many teeth in a predatory grin. It nodded, then resumed moving in sync with me, but now there was something subtly wrong with all my movements in the mirror, as if the reflection was leading rather than following, making decisions a split second before I did, subtly dictating my actions. I hurried away, shaken more than I wanted to admit. In my years on the force, I'd seen some terrible things. The aftermath of gang violence, domestic disputes gone horribly wrong, bodies pulled from the bay after too long in the water, but nothing had prepared me for the quiet horror of watching my own reflection become something else, something alien. The night grew colder as it deepened. Around midnight, I found myself on the third floor again, drawn there by a sound I couldn't quite identify. Something between a hum and a whisper, a siren's call of dread. The hallway looked different now. The carpet pattern seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at it. Geometric shapes flowing into each other like liquid shadows. That's when I noticed the door to room 303. It was unlike the others, older, with strange markings carved into the wood, a language of nightmares. The brass numbers were tarnished, almost black, but they seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it, swallowing the illumination like a black hole. As I watched, a thin line of what looked like water began seeping out from under the door. I took a step closer, then stopped, my instincts screaming at me. Rule 2. Room 303 remains sealed. But my police instincts were battling the fear. If there was water damage, I should investigate. If someone was in there, trapped or hurt, a sound came from behind the door, soft at first, like someone crying. Then it changed, became deeper, wetter, more guttural. The crying transformed into laughter, but not human laughter. It was something twisted and broken. It reminded me of the sound a suspect had made once, when we found him at a murder scene, covered in blood and completely disconnected from reality, a descent into madness. The water kept flowing, but now I noticed it was too dark to be water, too thick, too viscous. It smelled like copper and something else, something older and fouler, a scent of ancient decay. The laughter got louder, and underneath it, I heard something moving in the room, something heavy being dragged across the floor, getting closer to the door, each scrape and groan a countdown to terror. I backed away, my shoes leaving prints in the dark liquid. The laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by a sound like wet meat slapping against wood. Something heavy hit the other side of the door with sickening force. The brass handle began to turn, slowly, degree by degree, an invitation to hell. I ran, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Back in the lobby, I fought to catch my breath, my heart trying to pound its way out of my chest, a frantic rhythm against the silence. The front desk clock read 12:17 a.m. I did a quick check of the hotel system's lights, cameras, locks. Everything seemed normal superficially, but normal had become a dangerously relative term in the hotel. The basement camera feed caught my attention again. The image was clearer now, showing long rows of old storage shelves and what looked like abandoned furniture covered in sheets, a scene of forgotten memories. As I watched, one of the sheets moved, just slightly, just enough to make me doubt my own eyes. A trick of the light, perhaps. Then a shadow passed in front of the camera, too fast to make out clearly, but definitely humanoid in shape, a fleeting glimpse of something not meant to be seen. I checked the rules again, my fingers trembling. Checked the basement every hour. With shaking hands, I noted the time and activity in the security log. The paper felt wrong under my fingers, too smooth, almost organic, like skin. The ink seemed to sink into it like it was being absorbed rather than drying, disappearing into the fibers. A noise from the lobby made me look up, pulling me from my thoughts. The main chandelier was swaying slightly, though there was no breeze, no open windows. The crystals chimed against each other, creating a discordant melody that made my teeth ache, a symphony of impending doom. Then the lights flickered once, twice. I knew what was coming, the inevitable descent. Rule 5. When lights flicker thrice, hide. The third flicker plunged the lobby into darkness, a suffocating blackness that pressed against my eyes. In the silence that followed, I heard it, a wet, sliding sound coming from the direction of the grand staircase, a herald of something terrible. Something was moving in the dark, something big, something monstrous. The sound got closer, accompanied by a smell that took me back to my worst crime scenes. Decay and chemicals and something else, something that didn't belong in this world, an alien stench of corruption. I ducked behind the front desk, making myself as small as possible, trying to disappear into the shadows. Years of police work had taught me how to handle dangerous situations, how to face down armed suspects, but nothing in my training covered whatever this was, this entity of darkness. The darkness seemed alive, pressing against my skin like cold, wet velvet, a suffocating embrace. Finally, the lights flickered back on, banishing the immediate terror. The lobby was empty but changed. All the furniture had been rearranged, every piece now facing the front desk where I'd been hiding, as if they were all watching me. Water dripped from the chandelier, though when I later checked, the crystals were completely dry, a phantom moisture. My hands shook as I checked the time. 1:30 a.m., less than halfway through my shift, an eternity to survive. The lobby clock showed the same time, but something was off about its movement, a subtle discordance in its rhythm. The lobby clock showed the same time, but something was off about its movement, a subtle discordance in its rhythm. The second hand didn't tick. It flowed instead, like liquid mercury slithering across the clock face. I needed to move to break free from the paralyzing grip of fear. The elevator chimed, a beckoning sound, and its polished brass doors parted with a smooth, hushed sigh. My legs ached, protesting the time spent crouched behind the desk, and the mere thought of climbing more stairs sent throbbing pain through my knees. But Rule 4 was absolute. Use only stairs after midnight. As I turned toward the stairwell, I heard it, a faint humming emanating from the open elevator. It resembled an old lullaby, the kind mothers murmur to their children. Sarah used to hum a similar tune when sleep eluded her, on those nights when the weight of the job followed me home, when the nightmares, the humming intensified, growing more alluring. Just one ride wouldn't hurt, right? My feet moved almost without conscious thought, drawn toward that soothing sound. I was 3 steps from the elevator when a scream ripped through the air from inside. Not a scream of fear or pain, but something unnatural, like metal tearing itself asunder. The doors slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls, followed by the sickening sound of the elevator plummeting down, 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 for far longer than the building's actual height should allow. The basement camera feed snapped my attention back to the security office. The image had morphed. The storage room was now packed with figures, all standing rigidly still, facing away from the camera. Their attire spanned eras, from contemporary business suits to garments that seemed centuries old. As I watched, they all pivoted in unison. revealing empty voids where their faces should have been. I scrambled to record the time and kill the monitor, my hands trembling so violently I could barely grip the pen. That's when the knocking commenced. At first, it was so subtle I questioned my own sanity. A gentle tapping at the front door, like raindrops on glass. I glanced at my watch. 2 a.m. precisely. Rule 3 flashed through my mind. Ignore all knocks between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. The tapping intensified, becoming more insistent. Then came the voice, Sarah's voice, flawless in every nuance. Mike, please, I know you're in there. Something's following me. Please, baby, let me in. My heart constricted. The desperation in her voice echoed that night 5 years ago when a suspect had trailed her home from the courthouse. I'd arrived just in time then, but now, please, Mike, I can hear it coming closer. Don't let it get me. I dug my nails into my palms, using the pain to ground myself. It wasn't real. Couldn't be real. But God, it sounded so damn much like her. The knocking escalated to pounding, the doors shuddering in their frames. Sarah's voice was joined by others, my former partner pleading for backup, my mother calling me home, my father's voice, dead these past 10 years, asking why I'd failed him. Each voice knew precisely what to say, which emotional levers to manipulate. Then they all ceased abruptly, replaced by a single voice that spoke in a wet, gurgling whisper. We know what you did, Michael Sullivan. We know about the evidence you destroyed before going to internal affairs. We know about the witness you convinced to stay quiet. Such a righteous man, aren't you? Such a crusader for justice. But we know what you really are. Nobody knew about that. I'd never confided in anyone, not even Sarah. The voice was right. Before going to internal affairs, I destroyed evidence of minor infractions, persuaded a witness to recant their statement regarding a fellow officer's misconduct. I justified it to myself as protecting good cops from bureaucratic overreach, but really, I'd been just as compromised as everyone else. The pounding resumed, more violent now, the wood of the door beginning to splinter. Through the widening cracks, I caught glimpses of something moving outside, shapes that writhed and shifted, too many limbs moving in impossible ways. The air grew heavy with the stench of decay and copper and old pennies. I retreated from the door, colliding with something solid. Spinning around, I found myself face to face with a woman in an elegant 1920s dress. Her skin was the color of ash, her eyes milky and vacant, and her mouth stretched impossibly wide, filled with row upon row of needle-like teeth. "Would you like to dance?" she asked, her voice reverberating as if originating from somewhere far beneath the hotel. The ballroom is always open to new guests. Rule 7 hammered in my mind. Do not speak to those who speak to you. I kept my gaze lowered, refusing to acknowledge the woman in the 1920s dress. She advanced, the fabric of her dress rustling like dead leaves. The temperature plummeted so rapidly I could see my breath forming bizarre patterns in the air that resembled writing. "Everyone dances eventually," she whispered, her voice now emanating from behind me despite her standing in front. "Some just need more persuasion." I forced myself to walk away, keeping my pace steady despite every instinct screaming at me to flee. Behind me, her laughter echoed off the walls, multiplying until it seemed to surround me. The sound pursued me down the hallway, growing distorted, morphing into something that triggered a memory of a case I'd worked, a record player discovered at a murder scene, playing backwards at half speed. The basement camera feed drew me back to the security office like a lodestone. The monitors cast a sickly blue pall over everything, making the shadows in the corners seem deeper, more animate. The storage room was empty again, but something was different. All the sheet-covered furniture had been arranged into a circle. In the center, I leaned closer, my nose almost touching the screen. In the center of the circle was a figure in a police uniform, standing with its back to the camera, my old uniform. The figure's head began to turn, rotating far beyond the limits of human anatomy. Just before its face came, as that face came into view, I remembered Rule 8 and killed the monitor, my heart hammering against my ribs. My watch showed 3:13 a.m., but a glance at the lobby clock twisted my vision into knots. 13:13. I blinked hard, convinced I was hallucinating, but the impossible time persisted, the clock's hands ticking in subtle, unnatural jerks that defied the very essence of time itself. Something was profoundly wrong, more so than usual, I should say. The air had grown heavy, almost viscous, each breath feeling like a slow drowning. The shadows lurking in the lobby's corners were expanding, spreading like spilled ink across the marble floor. The candle, the essential lobby candle, had been extinguished. Rule 6 slammed into me like a physical blow. Always leave a candle burning in the lobby. My hands shook as I fumbled for my lighter. The shadows were undeniably in motion now, flowing across the floor and scaling the walls like dark water. The temperature plummeted, and I heard that wet, sliding sound again, closer this time, coupled with the sickening crack and pop of too many joints moving in the wrong direction. The lighter refused to ignite. I could feel them now, the entities in the darkness, their icy breath ghosting across the back of my neck. Whispers saturated the air, weaving in languages that no human tongue was ever meant to shape. Something brushed against my leg, something damp and frigid that left trails of fire on my skin through my pants. "Come on, you piece of..." I muttered, wrestling with the lighter. The darkness was nearly complete, the sole illumination emanating from the lobby clock's face, which now displayed a sequence of numbers that burned my eyes to behold. Behind me, something immense shifted its weight. I could sense its presence, a black hole pulling at my very spine. Every instinct screamed at me to turn, to confront whatever horror lurked there. But somehow I knew that if I did, if I averted my gaze from that candle for even a fraction of a second, I would never escape this place. Finally, the lighter sparked. The wick caught, and a wave of warm light washed over the lobby. The whispers ceased instantly, and the presence behind me vanished. But when I did turn around, I saw that every piece of furniture in the lobby had been meticulously rearranged to face my position. The upholstery was damp, as if something had been dripping on it, but the moisture evaporated even as I watched. The lobby clock now read 4:45 a.m. Dawn was approaching, but I knew the worst was yet to come. The rules had revealed themselves to be real, terrifyingly, undeniably real, and I still had to endure another hour, had to make it to sunrise without violating that final cryptic rule. When you leave the hotel at sunrise, never look back. The hotel seemed to anticipate my thoughts. The whispers began anew, but with a different tone now. They spoke of escape, of freedom, of returning to my normal life. They promised answers about the corruption I'd uncovered, evidence that would exonerate me. All I had to do was glance back as I left. Just a single glance, that's all it would require. I checked the basement camera one last time. The feed showed the storage room, normal at first glance. But as I watched, the sheets covering the furniture began to stir, rising and falling as if something was breathing beneath them. One sheet slipped, revealing not furniture but what appeared to be a human form, twisted and distorted, as if viewed through warped glass. The last hour was the most agonizing. The hotel seemed to awaken around me, as if the very building was stirring. The walls pulsed subtly, like the breathing of something enormous. Dark liquid seeped from between the marble tiles, forming patterns that resembled words before dissolving away. The air grew thick with the stench of decay and something else, something sickly sweet and metallic that reminded me of the time we found that serial killer's workshop, the drain in the center of the floor still fresh with, no, focus. I couldn't afford to let my mind wander down those dark paths. Not now. 5:15 a.m. The first glimmers of dawn should have been visible through the lobby windows, but the darkness outside seemed absolute, as if the hotel existed within its own pocket of perpetual night. The candle's flame danced erratically, casting shadows that moved independently of the light source. They crept along the walls like living entities, forming shapes that seared my eyes to behold. Faces contorted in agony, bodies twisted in impossible ways. I heard footsteps on the grand staircase, slow, deliberate steps that sounded fundamentally wrong. Looking up, I saw my old partner, Dave, descending the stairs. He looked exactly as he had the last time I saw him alive, before he ate his gun after the internal affairs scandal broke. His uniform was immaculate, but his head was wrong, tilted at an angle that made my stomach churn. "Hey, Michael Sullivan," he said, his voice gurgling through the ruin of his throat. "Remember what you said at my funeral? About how you wished you could have saved me? Well, here's your chance. Just stay. Stay with us." I backed away, keeping my eyes glued to the lobby clock. The hands were now moving backwards, spinning faster and faster until they became a blur. The temperature plunged so rapidly that frost bloomed on the mirrors, etching patterns that resembled screaming faces. Then she appeared, Sarah, wearing the same blue dress she'd worn the day she left. But her movements were off, jerky and unnatural, like a marionette being manipulated by unseen strings. "Michael Sullivan, baby," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "I understand now. I was wrong to leave. We can start over. Just look at me. Really look at me." More figures emerged from the shadows. My father, still wearing his hospital gown from the day he died. My mother, her face frozen in the expression of shock she'd worn when she found him. Suspects she'd worn the day she left, but her movements were off, jerky and unnatural, like a marionette being manipulated by unseen strings. "Michael Sullivan, baby," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "I understand now. I was wrong to leave. We can start over. Just look at me. Really look at me." More figures emerged from the shadows. My father, still wearing his hospital gown from the day he died. My mother, her face frozen in the expression of shock she'd worn when she found him. Suspects I'd arrested, victims I'd failed to save, witnesses whose lives I'd ruined. They formed a circle around me, their voices a maddening cacophony of pleas and accusations. The lobby candle flickered precariously, threatening to extinguish. Driven by a desperate instinct, I rushed to light another, and another, building a fragile barrier of light around myself. The spectral figures recoiled from the growing flames, yet their voices swelled, becoming an unbearable chorus. They knew things, secrets I'd buried deep, thoughts I'd never dared to voice. They spoke of the evidence I'd destroyed before going to internal affairs, the witnesses I'd pressured into changing their statements, the small compromises that had started me down the slippery slope to my own personal hell. 5:45 a.m. The clock faces throughout the lobby began to display a bizarre unreality, each showing a different time. Some racing forward, others dragging backward, some displaying numbers that defied logic. The mirrors shimmered and distorted like disturbed water, reflecting twisted versions of the lobby that were subtly, horrifyingly wrong. Some desolate and decaying, others teeming with elegant parties from bygone eras, still others depicting scenes of unspeakable horror. I heard that sound from the hallway again, that wet, sliding sound drawing ever closer. The woman in the 1920s dress materialized again, her invitation to dance persistent and unnerving. Room 303's door had somehow been relocated to the lobby itself, a dark, viscous liquid pooling ominously beneath it. The knocking resumed, more frantic, more desperate than before. Through it all, one single thought, a lifeline of sanity, echoed in my mind. Dawn brings escape if you don't look back. Finally, impossibly, a sliver of real light began to penetrate the windows. The figures grew more agitated, their movements becoming increasingly erratic and desperate. They begged, they threatened, they pleaded with a terrifying intensity. They promised answers, redemption, a semblance of peace. The very walls seemed to groan under some immense pressure, and I sensed something vast and ancient stirring in the depths of the hotel. 6:01 a.m. The first true ray of sunrise sliced through the oppressive darkness of the lobby like a blade, banishing the shadows that had seemed so solid only moments before. This was my chance, my only chance. I walked toward the front doors, my legs trembling with exhaustion and fear, but my stride firm with a newfound resolve. The voices grew louder, more desperate, employing every trick they possessed to make me falter, to make me turn around. Sarah's voice pierced through the chaotic din. "Mike, please, don't leave me here alone. My father. Son. After all these years, you won't even look at me?" Dave's gurgling laugh. "Running away again, partner? Like you ran when they came for me?" I pushed through the heavy doors, stepping out into the cool, crisp morning air. The voices pursued me, growing louder, more hysterical, more insistent. Something cold and clammy brushed against the back of my neck. Heavy footsteps approached rapidly from behind, accompanied by that sickening wet, sliding sound. The hotel itself seemed to be calling me back, beckoning me to return to its nightmare embrace. But I didn't look back, couldn't look back. I made it to my car, my hands shaking so violently that I could barely manage to get the key into the ignition. As I drove away, I finally allowed myself a fleeting glance in the rearview mirror. The Biltmore stood silent and dark, its facade betraying no hint of the horrors I'd witnessed within its walls. Just another abandoned building, patiently waiting for its next unsuspecting victim. That was 3 days ago. I haven't slept since then. Can't sleep because every time I close my eyes, I see that thing in the hallway, those dead guests, my own reflection smirking mockingly at me. The rules are still in my pocket, crumpled and stained. I've tried desperately to destroy them, but every morning they reappear, the typewritten text subtly different each time, mocking me with their permanence. Sometimes, when I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror, my reflection moves just a fraction of a second too late, or maybe I'm the one moving too late now, forever out of sync with reality. I honestly can't tell anymore. The lines have blurred beyond recognition. The worst part? I'm starting to notice things, subtle changes. In my own apartment, the shadows seem deeper, more oppressive than before. The walls seem to pulse faintly when I'm not looking directly at them. A subtle, sickening undulation. And sometimes, late at night, when the city sleeps, I hear knocking at my door, soft at first, then growing louder, more insistent. I don't know what's happening to me, but I do know one thing with chilling certainty. I'm never going back to the Biltmore Hotel. Unless I already looked back, sealing my fate. Unless I never really left at all, and this is all just an extension of that nightmare. God help me, I think I hear footsteps in the hallway right now, and they sound wet, disturbingly wet.